This is the injury report presented by NYU Langone Health. Knicks big man Precious Achiuwa has yet to make his season debut, and my man still hasn't even been able to practice because of a really bad hamstring injury. So in today's injury report, we're talking with Dr. Guillem Gonzalez-Lomas of NYU Langone Sports Medicine on how Precious, missing some precious minutes, is already affecting an already thin Knicks rotation early in the season. Doc, what's going on, man? Looking good. How you feeling?
Hey, Brandon, right back at you. Good.
Are we talking hamstrings today? And Precious has been out with this hamstring injury since the preseason. I'm talking October 18th to be exact, Doc. That's nearly 4 weeks, and he still hasn't even been cleared for contact. So we understand how hamstrings take a little bit of time to heal, but what's holding Precious back in terms of getting him on the practice court, let alone the garden court?
Yeah, well, Brandon, hamstring injuries are really, really challenging to treat. And the one thing you've got to know about this muscle complex, because that's what it is. It's a bunch of muscles, 3 main ones, but there are others that are involved all in the back of the thigh. They span 2 joints. So they actually attach, 3 of them attach together right on the sit bone. So that's really on the other side of the hip bone. And then they go all the way down to the shin bone. So they cross the knee as well. So really complicated biomechanics. And it's not unusual to have an estimate that actually ends up getting a little delayed because the player just hasn't gotten back to their level, to their strength, or to a pain-free status.
Is there a chance that he could have surgery like Dak Prescott?
So, that's interesting. And obviously, I'm not privy to the details and the MRI findings of each of their injuries. But, from what's out there, it sounds like Dak Prescott's injury is more of a partial avulsion of the tendon off of the bone. So that would be where those muscles converge into one tendon and attach on the sit bone. That's very amenable to fixing. So that tendon is pretty solid, has good integrity. You can pass stitches in there and connect it back to the bone. And in fact, it's probably something that you need to do because if you don't, that could lead to a full rupture. It seems like with Precious, the injury is likely more in the muscle belly area. So that could involve some tendon, could involve some fascia, which is the membrane that surrounds the muscle, but it's most likely more of a muscle injury. And those typically we just have to let heal on their own. So same muscle, different kind of injury.
Okay, that's good news because we haven't even heard anyone, not even our beat writer, Stephen Bondy, say anything that the Knicks would even be alluding to having Precious take that surgery or have surgery. So like you said, I guess it's just a heal and a rehab process. Break down the rehab process for us.
Well, for these injuries, again, we just talked about how complex that muscle is spanning 2 joints. So number one, when you get one of these injuries, mobility. So typically we're going to have these athletes start to move slowly, painlessly, until we get to a point where that's comfortable, both at the hip and the knee. And once they're comfortable with mobility, you can start some strengthening. During this whole time, you'll be throwing modalities at them. So things like stim. The pool is great. It unloads the lower extremities so you can get in the pool, do some pool walking, maybe pool running. But basically, the goal here is to increase the strength and the stress without pain. And as long as the athlete is pain-free, you can keep progressing. And sometimes they've hit a little wall periodically, and you just have to kind of stay where you are and eventually wait until they fully heal and then keep pushing.
Hopefully he gets fully healed soon. I mean, he hasn't even hit the practice court yet. And because of that, some of these starters, Doc, they're logging some heavy minutes 11 games into the season. You take 82 games and you times that by an increased workload. We both know that could tax an athlete's body. I just think of OG Anunoby's body, how it pretty much broke down during the playoffs last year. So should the Knicks training staff be in Tom Thibodeau's ear about monitoring minutes early in the season for the starters?
Yeah, well, you should be on that training staff or at least in management because that's a really good forward-thinking way of approaching this. It's natural to want to play your good players more when one of them is out, but the reality is you do have to take everything into consideration. And the minutes do add up. And at this level, they're really redlining it every single game. So I think, it's probably outside of my wheelhouse to make personnel decisions, but this is what depth means, right, for teams. So this is what having players that can come in, maybe players that are playing very few minutes a night, playing some more minutes a night to cover for an absence like this. This is where that really comes into play.
All right, Doc, let's take the fans through what the athletes go through. So could a normal person suffer this injury, and how would they recover compared to a professional athlete?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Brandon. I don't know if I count as a normal person, but I've actually had a bunch of these. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a very common injury, ubiquitous, runners, anybody who sprints, you can sustain one of these injuries. And really the process is the same. So you want to initially get your mobility back, get to a point where moving the hip and the knee is pain-free. And then once you get that, then start to do a little bit more resistance training, initially light. You could do bands, and then eventually get to something a little bit heavier, but super helpful to do under the auspices of physical therapy. And, not all of us have access to a training room 24/7. We're not doing 2-3 sessions a day like a pro athlete, but even getting some home exercises from PT, starting to do those regularly can go a long way. And the more you work on it after that initial injury, usually the less likelihood of a future injury. Unfortunately, these guys can tend to recur fairly often. So good idea to treat it right the first time.
Doc, you put a hamstring run into surgery, huh? You're a superhero, man. You're a superhero. All right, but thanks for joining us, Doc. That was fun.
Yeah, same here. Take care.